It reminded me of something. I was in the golf course and was having one of these big conversations, and one of the guys was saying, well, yeah, people need to do like I did. I went to school, I worked, I did all that to go to college and do all those things. So, but welfare and the government helping them, they shouldn't have. So I asked them a question. I said, let me ask you a question. If you were a man on the lower end of the totem pole, you had kids, you have a wife, and here's John Doe sitting down there that's got all of these things. Are you going to let your family starve, or are you going to take from him? That's what it's coming down to, where these people at the bottom got to be criminals to survive. How will they survive? The government programs that they have, food stamps, they're beginning to have restrictions on that. So here's this part of the conversation that can't meet it. They just can't meet it. So they said, whose fault is it? It's everybody's fault. It's not just his parents or whatever. If you check, the parent lives the same way he lives.
I studied social change movements. Education is an important part of it, whether it was, the freedom schools and the civil rights movement, or how people were educated and learned about the Underground Railroad. So it just fit in nicely with this idea of wanting to change the world. I still remember I did something with Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan, music about the Vietnam War down the road at Northside, which is where I graduated from. I was hooked. It was like, oh, this is cool, this is fun.
I got involved in the education because the black people who were in education at that time didn't have a representative. When I come in, I was working offshore for Unical. When I got in, I had 200 kids in my yard. And they told me they wanted me to be their representative. And I've been involved in it ever since.
When I was little, we'd go to my grandma's house and we'd play school all the time, my cousins and I was always the teacher. So I guess from a young age, I just always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And my grandma would always say, you either be a nurse or a teacher. So I thought that was the only two things that we could do in life as a woman.
I've seen a lot of students today, they're teachers, they're counselors, they're principals at different schools. A lot of them just went off into other degrees and left. But it's a satisfying thing to know that you contributed, however small it is.
I like to see data and results. So once I get that from my kids, that's what makes it so rewarding, to make a difference in their life. You are molding little minds and getting them ready for the adulthood. I teach 5th grade, and I always tell them that I'm, getting them ready for high school and junior high and wanting them to be independent little people, I call them.
I used to co-direct the National Writing Project of Acadiana. We had a huge event at the Hilliard Art Museum on a Saturday with students that we had been working with, some of them since 6th grade. I can't tell you how fulfilling that was to watch a room full of people reading and writing poetry together on a Saturday when nobody had to be there. That to me is kind of why we do it, because you see the inspiration.
If you start a child off right during the first 4 years, to me, that's the formative time. When that child reaches the 4th grade, you either have instilled the things in him by then or he's lost. Right there is where they split off and take different paths. And my grandfather used to tell me all the time, if you're going to bend a tree, you have to bend it when it's young. So therefore, if you don't have the ability to read and understand what you're reading, you're lost. And that's where we are. We have a whole segment of the population that's being left behind.
Our limits have been put on us. We don't have the educational freedom that we used to in the past. When I first started teaching, you had more choices as to what you were doing in your classroom. Now there's so many limitations as to what you have to teach, what programs you have to teach. So that definitely puts a strain on teachers. Now it's like more test taking strategies and stuff like that to get them ready for that middle and high school, because all we do is test them to death. So I would definitely say through the years, the freedom is less and less, and they've had many different programs we've had to adapt and change to. For example, when I taught first grade, and let's say we were learning about a certain, I don't know, a certain topic or something, I might have taken them in the cafeteria and we might have like did a cooking lesson and stuff, whereas now I couldn't go bring my class to do something like that because we're such on tight guidelines and teaching for the test.
I can't think of another profession that there are so many forces coming from outside the profession telling us what we need to be as a profession. What's essentially happened to teachers who, again, they're professionals, they have college degrees, but they're treated like a middle-level manager in a business where the decisions have already been made, and their job is just to deliver those decisions. And that, I don't think there's a single teacher who got into it because they wanted to follow orders from a state guidebook or whatever. They got into it because they wanted to teach, and that involves some levels of freedoms. We talk about pulling people up by their bootstraps in our culture, but you got to make sure they have boots on first. And that's sometimes where I think we stumble as a society. We neglect the fact that so many of our young people are going to bed hungry every night. We forget that that's the only square meal they're going to get all day is when they come to school. There's a wide gap between the opportunities that are afforded to young people based upon their geography. And it's criminal is what it is. So it shouldn't matter that you live in a different zip code in terms of the opportunities. Do I think things might get better if we invested more into education and tried to be more respectful of our teachers and really let them teach as opposed to having all of these restrictions placed on them? I think it would matter.
I think they need to listen to the teachers. Ask us for our opinions, our insight on certain things, what we feel needs to change, because we with them every day, the longest part of the day, more than their parents, and those that are making all the decisions.
Educators don't have the respect that they should have in Louisiana. Until we change that, we don't have a chance.
There's wisdom in that sort of collective voice rising up saying, this is not good. We have and I hate using the word crisis, but I think we're there. I think it is a crisis.